as an intimacy coordinator, I work in film and television, and I can work in commercials with regards to, like, you know, you see these actors like in the shower with the soap suds and stuff. It's just anywhere where the performer is going to be either doing hyper exposed work or vulnerable work, like either trauma or sexually violent stuff, like just anywhere where we are like triggered, you know, like those, like if you read the thing and you go, that seems like a really emotionally charged, you know, childbirth, you know, I've done military torture scenes where, you know, just holding space for the person who is torturing, who that's not real, you know, and that's hard to do. And then the person being tortured, which is like, you know, how do you make sure that person doesn't start to disassociate, like on hour 3, hour 7, hour 12, you know? So all of these things, it's like just holding space. So I'm not really like the intimacy police so much as I'm an intimacy like facilitator, you know, like how do we do these things in a dynamic way, in a safe way? And then after we're done, I would love for the performer, and this has been the experience so far, to feel like they had a great time playing, you know, playing pretend. One of the things that I do on set is I have the color system, which is a traffic light of systems where I ask performers a series of questions that are relevant to the scene with regards to their boundaries. And people, in my experience, have had a lot of different kinds of boundaries. And I don't need to know why. Oftentimes that comes out in the conversation, and I hold space for that. And it is not relayed to anyone outside of just the two of us. But I'll have a red light. So those are no-go zones. Those are the zones on your body where you cannot and will not be touched. And so I ask performers, like, you know, is there anywhere, you know? So, and then when they say, no, I'm fine, I'm totally fine with everything, because performers love to please, you know? So I say, that's great. Okay. So I make a note, and then I go, so you're fine being touched on the forehead? Yes. And then on the cheek, and they're like, yes. And I'm like, on the neck, and they're like, I don't know. Like, I didn't think of that. And I'm like, okay, well, let's go back to that. We'll make that a yellow. And then they're like, and then I go, and then like, how about down the arm? And they're like, I don't like to be touched in the back of my arm, or I don't like it when people touch my elbow. And like, just things. And you don't have to understand it so much as, you know, take really good notes, you know, and everybody has a thing. Everybody has a thing in the front of my stomach, my belly button. Do not touch my face. Some people are like, do not touch my face, and do not touch my hair. Very important, you know, so you have to like understand trauma, and you do have to understand and hold space for people's boundaries, and you have to know what questions to ask. And that's, I guess, where it comes in handy to be, and necessary and critical, I would say, to be a certified intimacy coordinator versus just a self-proclaimed caring about people buddy on set for you to keep you safe. You know, it's like this job is so much more profound than that. So back to the color system. So the no-go zones are non-negotiable. I no longer need to talk to you about it. Nobody on set will scream out, that's great. Can you just, like, the director won't go, can you just like maybe pull his hair, you know, or pull her hair, pull their hair. Because that's a red zone, and they've been informed of the red zones. So that shuts the chapter on that. The yellow zones are conversations where they don't know if they have that boundary. They never thought about it. That remains red until the yellow turns green. Okay, so I just move in a way that yellow is basically red until and if it turns green. So if after an explanation, and then like some people don't want their thighs to be touched, and yet there's a scene where they're going to be like touched. So what if we, you know, placed something on that space, you know, so that there's a barrier between the two of you? And they're like, I don't know. Well, once I explain to them what that barrier looks like, and I show it to them, and I explain it to them, and then they're like, you know, that totally will work. Or no. So then the yellow either turns green or red. but it will not remain yellow. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
But it gives us a conversation starting point. And then the green zones, I'm totally fine with these. These are very comfortable for me. These are the zones where, and then I write them all down and I express them to the other performers involved. I express it to anybody else that's going to come into contact with them in that scene. And then the director. That way, if the director wants to yell out something, then they know what parameters to do it so that it doesn't come to a halt, a screeching, traumatic halt, where they're like, no, all of a sudden trust has been breached, feelings are like on edge. The other performer, shame, like feels awful, like something's happened that shouldn't have. And so, yeah, like this is not a thing where only like I'm not protecting people from bad people. It's like missteps happen and they can really ruin like the relationship between the performer and the people in an employment position, so it's very complicated. So those are the traffic lights.
But what's interesting with the traffic lights too is when we had that conversation before, it made me think, what are my boundaries? And then it made me really wonder, so I could be prepared on set to go, okay. And again, I'm assuming even if I knew my boundaries, you go on set, you go, this might just become a boundary, right? But to know that I could have someone there and be like, hey, here's a new boundary I just discovered. And then they could relay that to the director versus having that tension and awkwardness on the set. You're very valuable.
Yeah, well, and in that, to that point, you would normally probably push through it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And ignore the boundary. And that's what's happened in the past, I think, with most performers. And then the performer you're with, if you're with another performer, they're like realizing you're uncomfortable. But like, if you're not saying anything, they'll just push through. So there's two of you having this terrible experience for different reasons and on different levels. And it's really, it's just really avoidable. Think of it as like in real life, if you're in a relationship and where your partner, likes to be caressed and what have you, or what ways to communicate with them that really like resonates with them. Talk to them in the evening, never in the morning, or whatever about someone, it just deepens your intimacy. And that's just like, intimacy is an umbrella word, and that's just like any kind of connection, human connection, works better when you deepen your knowledge of them. So these are just more tools for performers to create that parameter. And then within that, they get to really kind of experience what their character is going through, but holding space for themselves too. So I am not elevating the performer above myself. You know what I mean? Like we are one person. We're going to go through this and we're going to do it safely so that when we're done, you know what I mean? Like when I'm done playing as a performer, I will feel whole. I will feel like I played a character that is, so-and-so, that I do not like it. There's no relation in our lives. But from what I know and my experience and my imagination, I was able to create a safe space for that person's story to be told.
You just make something that should be, a little awkward and no one wants to talk about it. Just make it open and honest, and let's just have those conversations. And this is no judgment. Just tell me what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And then when I have that, when I'm working with someone that just would be able to, guys, this is not a big deal. Let's calm down. Cool. You don't want someone to touch your neck. We move on from there. Like okay, cool. So I thought this was going to ruin the production, but we can just pivot. Amazing. This is so simple. And so just having someone like you with this positive energy, but also this professionalism to know, hey, we can't do that. This is not happening. Like we have to all be on the same page. It just makes sense that you should be everywhere. And I think that's why when I'm looking, I'm like, wait, why doesn't everyone know Chantal? Why doesn't everyone know what an intimacy coordinator is? I'm like, well, let's get this out there.
They're starting to. It's, having someone on set that asks you the questions like you were saying before, that allow you to even consider yourself in this process. I mean, and give yourself permission to walk away if once you realize that you've expressed these boundaries and that they're not being held safely by the production, to just understand that this is one production of very many. You will not be like ostracized for taking care of yourself. And if you are, in my experience, I have always felt really happy that I, expressed myself, and like, I don't regret having come forward in the LA Times article. I don't regret anything, even with all of the the consequences, the fallout of it. I feel like the importance of it outweighed what it is I was doing.
Through your
Absolutely.
agent?
I do have an agent, and her
Okay.
name is Amanda Blumenthal, and it's Intimacy Professional Association on Instagram. And so, it's also intimacyprofessionalassociation.com. And then there's a list of certified intimacy coordinators there, myself included. And there are so many of us that come from different journeys in this life, and we've come to this work through so many different avenues. So it's really just important for you to get the intimacy coordinator that speaks to your production, be it maybe someone from the LGBTQIA plus, community, or someone that really leans into that advocacy, or, an IC, that's African American, if that speaks to your performers and their well-being. I think that's really important. Just diverse, there's a diverse amount of ICs that are available. And so if you're like, I love what she does, but I don't know that she's the best one for our production, there are other ones. And I think just no matter what, these conversations are about people getting an IC, not just get me. I just really want people to see what's best for them.
I know I knew you'd probably say hire all of us, because that's who you are.